the AAPL Constituency Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us on the AAPL Constituency Podcast, the voice behind the industry. Hosted by Linda Hyde and Eddie Wilson, this podcast tells real stories shaping private lending, from lenders and innovators to policymakers and investors. Each episode dives into the people, moments, and ideas driving the future of real estate finance. Tune in and hear their voices behind the industry. Thanks so much for joining us again today. Our podcast is brought to you by CV3 Financial Services, the unconventional lender built to help brokers win more deals. Whether your clients are looking to buy and hold, fix and flip, build from the ground up, or pull cash out to fund their next move, CV3 Financial can help with financing in 47 states. Visit cv3financial.com/AAPL to learn more. We've got an amazing guest, somebody that if you have been in this space, you probably already know well. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Nima.
Appreciate it, Eddie.
Yeah. So as we're kind of jumping in, we are reminiscing a little bit before we went live. And we have to go all the way back to 2013, 2014. And we, as you guys know, Linda and I were kind of, just starting to get our feet under us at the association. It was the Good Old Boys Club. It was a country club for lenders and people that serviced them. And Linda takes me on a tour. So if you guys have watched the podcast, you know the story. Find Linda in a corner. I end up having to let go of the entire staff except for her and Chrissy. And then we began to retool this thing. And Linda said, you have to get out and get to know some of the people in the industry. And so we ended up taking a little tour and ended up in a restaurant, I believe in Orange County. And after the worst traffic day of my life.
Well, because you guys didn't realize. You're like, oh, we're going to... So you think of Southern California. This is the problem from anybody that's non-California. Right. You think of Southern California as a monolith.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, Orange County and Los Angeles County are next to each other.
Sure.
But it might as well be, I always tell people I'd rather fly to Las Vegas than I would to drive to Los Angeles. And so you got to taste that firsthand.
Well, I had done so much business in LA and I had done so much business in Orange County, but I don't think I'd ever made that drive before.
Yes.
I always either flew in Orange County or I flew into LA.
Yes.
And I was like, hey, she had never seen Hollywood before.
Yes.
And I was like, let me take you on a quick tour. Let me show you all the things. And so
we ate lunch in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I've never been. So Eddie drove me on to Hollywood.
And then
2.5 hours later, we ended up at the restaurant.
It was a long time.
With you, and thankful that you waited on us. I know Kevin ended up at a baseball game.
Yeah,
that's right.
He was over us at that point.
But what I remember is the very first conversation we had, which I appreciate. I remember the Mr. Chow conversation more because of different reasons. But the very first conversation we had really that was meaningful was you said, do you remember what you said?
Well, I came in hot, right? Because I was very frustrated.
Yeah.
I take, this is my career, this is my profession, and I always said, for lack of better, I'm a private lending attorney, right? In my core. And so I think it just felt like such a disservice to look around at places and go, hey, nobody's taking this seriously, right? And this is an industry that seemed to have a lot of legs to it at the time. And so I was ready because I'm like, I don't know who this Eddie guy is, but I'm sure it's just somebody who's going to just be like, oh yeah, total lip service and tell us what we want to hear. Or just be very oppositional and say, look, I'm in the business of running a conference and whoever is going to be writing checks is who we'll be working with. And so I remember just coming in very hot in that conversation. And I'm sitting there just trying to wait you out and ultimately yeah, that makes sense. That's a good point. And I was like, okay, all right, okay.
What was the point you were making though? Because I think that's where I want to kick off to.
Yeah.
What point were you making at that point?
I told you and I said, this association can either be one of two things ultimately. It can be a place in which all you really care about is sponsorship dollars, and that will dictate all of your content, everything you orient, and whoever writes you the biggest check will also be the person who appears to be the most promoted. And the problem if you go that route is it can never be a great association. And so you kind of have to pick a choice at this point and that's what I felt was historically what was occurring up to that point, attending these AAPL conferences, is it felt like you'll be great at running a conference. You just won't have an association. And so which one of these two things is important to you? Because I think we're in desperate need of an association and a real association that represents members' interests. And it's just not that right now. And I just remember you being like, yeah, that totally makes sense. We should do that. And I was like, okay. Now where do we go from here?
Is this really lip service or is this real? Yeah.
I mean, I remember leaving that, and I go, I don't know if he was just trying to be polite and wanted that conversation to end, or whether they're going to take serious steps moving forward. And, you proved everything you needed to prove from there.
Yeah. I think that's what we had felt, was that, when I came in and I laid off a bunch of people,
Right.
I had to get rid of the old, and even today there's still some of the old around. I mean, it just is what it is, right? Like, you can't start something and then can be, 100% distant from it. It's like, to some degree, there's always an element there. But I do remember that conversation, and I do remember the other thing I remember talking about was, you said there's a necessity for a marketplace, but an association doesn't always serve well as a marketplace. And you were like, you're gonna have to make a decision. You're either serving members in this capacity of an association, or it's a marketplace where we're all gonna just be here. We're gonna try to find clients, and it just is what it is. It's the conference. Right. And Linda and I went back. And, really the story actually is interesting because, I wasn't contractually, I was a minority owner, but my ownership wasn't even granted to me until much later, which is a whole other story. But really into 2018-19, this really didn't become mine. Like, we had to navigate these waters while fending off previous owners and expectations, right, and all this stuff.
Right.
To the degree that I tell the story, like in 2018, before I actually had majority control and ownership, it lost $800,000.
Wow.
2019, when it's finally like, okay, it's really mine now, right?
Yep.
Like, I can actually no matter what anybody thinks, I can make this choice. 2019, Linda literally makes this association profitable for the very first time.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, went from losing 800,000 to, and I don't care if we made $1, but we actually made money.
Right.
But what was important to me was our intention, though, as she and I were basically like really vision casting 2017, 18, 19, really trying to get out of that old mindset.
Right.
It wasn't about profit. It was about service. And so when other associations were popping up, other organizations were popping up, and they were charging exorbitant rates, we would always go back to what's the least we can charge with the most amount of service, where it doesn't diminish, where we actually grow the association. And to me, that's why we have over 800 members today, where it went back to 60 in the beginning. It's really because of conversations like that, where we made a choice, and to me, that to me is always very, very important. It's always principle over profit. And it's like, no matter what, in every business, principle over profit always leads to profit. Yep. Like, the byproduct is a successful business.
Correct.
And I think that I've seen you navigate the same things through the years, right? Like,
correct.
If you follow principle, which leads me to my second conversation with you. Okay. So the second conversation, and I got to let Linda get some words in here in a minute, but second conversation, we're sitting at Mr. Chow's, and Linda puts this entire dinner together, and we had we used to do these dinners where we just you put random people that I had to sit by and meet and spend time with.
Yes.
And I was not, contrary prior to popular belief, I don't actually enjoy socializing. Like, I'm actually more introverted.
Yeah.
I'm more introverted, but I have to do it. It's necessary. Yeah. And I remember seeing you thinking like, oh, I know Nima. I was like, I'm going to sit down here by Nima. And so we sat down, and do you remember the whole conversation that night revolved around faith? We didn't talk about lending at all.
And I don't think either of us anticipated that to be the conversation whatsoever.
No.
I remember calling my wife, and I was like, you won't believe what just happened. Eddie and I don't think we talked about the association business. We just at the one point, he was like, "Hugh, tell me your testimony." And I was like, "Really?"
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to do it. And it was just super. And I think I was crying at one point. It was an incredible conversation because it's just, it's not something you can generally do. Right?
Yeah.
But it was so formative about the way in which we approach the world.
Yeah.
And so without that knowledge basis, it's funny because oftentimes I have to tell people, I'm one of those people that very much internalizes my thoughts, and I work a lot in spreadsheets and otherwise. And so oftentimes I'm kind of driving to these various conclusions, but I've thought through them heavily before I've brought the conclusion to a person. And so I'm oftentimes thought of as, hey, what's your real motive here? Right? What are you hiding? And because I always tell people, like, I don't really care, and it's silly, but I don't really care about profits, right? Like, these are kind of, I just feel like you did the right thing, and those are the byproducts of those things. Like, the focus of monetary things isn't all that attractive ultimately. And from my experience, when you run really good businesses, they happen. So why do you care?
Right.
Right. And this is the story, right? Yeah. And so, but so much of that is a faith-driven journey, right? It really does take this concept of getting out of your own ego and self and really acknowledging like what you have isn't from you in the first place.
Right.
Right. And so the more you attribute your own success to your hard work, it's like, well, no, like I was born in this country. My parent, like I could have been born in Iran. Like all my life is basically chance for most of it. Right. So like, who am I to sit here and go like, oh, I've outworked everybody else and I got it. It was nonsense. Right. And so it was just so refreshing to be able to just have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's never happened again with anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, but to me that is what the strength of this industry is it is relational. You know, it's like we interviewed, Mike and Allison Tedesco, and it's like, it's relational, it's like, and when you trust someone, every person that you've brought into my world past that point has been somebody that's meaningful to me. It's like, because once you establish that baseline of trust, now it's like, okay, anybody that Nima puts in front of me, obviously I understand his ethos. I understand his ethic. I understand where he's coming from. So therefore I know there's no motive that is going to be opposite of whatever my own motives or desires are. And so it's like, oh, I could trust that person. They can come into my ecosystem too. Right. And to me, that's what's built the foundation of this industry. It's like, if you go back to the OG kind of like the people that we all know that have been around the industry for 10, 12, 15 years, it's like, you know them by that. It's like, it either is the good old boy network and it is self-serving, or there is such an amazing group of people in this industry that are selfless, and they really do have a passion for the industry. Yeah. And I know that you've cultivated that. And one of the long conversations that we have is, those are the people we put on stage. Those are the people we promote, right? Like, the conference has to make money, right? Like, the organization has to stay solvent. So you can, sponsor and you can be a part. But in the end, we don't necessarily have to give every sponsor that pays something a critical voice. And the critical voices are deserved by the people who have the greatest ability to give back, Correct. And so tell me, like, walk us through, and I don't want to, any questions you have, jump in. But, when you think about this industry and like kind of the evolution of it, and, it's like, where do you see us today? Obviously we're not going to get into, economy talk and stuff like that, but it's like, do you see us as in this place of, still evolving? Do you feel like we solidified as a true industry? Like, where are we today?
No, I actually think we're quite in our infancy. You've been around, and the way in which we, it's kind of an interesting story, right? We're back in this 2015, 2016 era, and anybody that knew me back then, that was my fake gold chain era.
Yeah, I remember the grill. Yeah, I didn't get a grill in.
It was just because it was a very small industry. Yeah. And so everyone's guard is down, and
having fun.
And I just had I went to the University of Miami for law school, and so I had the turnover chain. Yeah. And so we're just sitting there having a good time, and I have this big fake gold chain on. And I remember a couple of years ago being at an event, and I was talking to actually Jeff Tesh about this, and he's like, "Where's the gold chain, man?" And I was like, "You can't do that anymore, Jeff." Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, you can." I said, "No, you can't. The industry's changed a lot, and it's matured, right? It's professionalized." And that professionalization is quite at its infancy. And if you look at, I remember the early part of my career was primarily mortgage broker driven in terms of who are the operators. And then what started to happen 2015 on is you really had more of a finance operator, right? First and foremost, thinking of this as a financial product rather than thinking of it as a mortgage product. And so that shaped and reshaped kind of who were we going to start interacting with. And then now what you start to see is, most of the larger private lenders, they're all owned by institutions, right? Or have some significant institutional backing. And so that continues to evolve. And if you really think about it, then you have this like big bucket of private credit, right? And you go, actually, the people who are now interested in the space, have black and some sort of, stone type thing in their name, right? And so it's really, we're actually in a place that is rapidly professionalizing and
almost demanding professionalism.
And that's the thing, right? Is back in the day, you would have situations, for example, the only time people needed written policies and procedures was you were going to go out there and get a bank line of credit, right? And that's what the big dogs did.
boys.
Only them could ever get access to a line of credit. And now that's just the name of the game, right? If you don't have policies and procedures in place, you're not a serious operator. And those policies and procedures are now really indicia of serious businesses. Because now it's like, oh, actually, who is your executive team? How many years of experience do they have? Tell me very specifically your risk mitigation practices, right? And these were not things that existed that long ago. And so, and I think it's for the best, right? I mean, this kind of goes back into like, well, associations really start mattering in these situations because we're now at this really interesting impasse of saying, okay, well, who's going to start creating these standardizations of practices, right? And whose interests are they aligned with? And that's really where we sit right now is I think that we're going to look back as even these years as the wild, wild west years, because we're still in a place where there's a lot of discretion at the operator's level. And this is in an industry that appears to trend further and further towards a traditional mortgage banking environment.
Sure.
Right. So this may start looking a lot more like an MBA and those sorts of places, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think that's where when I think about where we're at, I think we're at this critical juncture of an industry that is massively professionalizing, and the days of the gold chainer are truly done.
They're done. Yeah. What questions do you have for Nima?
Yeah, you did. I had something in my head and I just lost it. So
I mean, I'm always ready.
I know you are. You're really good at that. Well, we talked about kind of where we started in our dynamics, right, of Lightning Docs, Fortra, and AAPL, and kind of where we are in explaining that, and people understanding in the industry, understanding what that looks like, and how AAPL plays a role. And I think talking about the professional standards and how that is, Fortra plays a part in that for us. I know that we've seen a lot more of these offices taking our trainings and using them and utilizing them with their staff. I mean, putting their whole staff through these trainings. So I think maybe us talking through kind of our dynamic and how that works is important. I think that there's a disconnect for a lot of the people in this industry because we have been so connected for so long, and we talk about the history and how that works. You and I connected and we had the conversation, and I remember when we talked about really solidifying you guys as our general counsel and having that conversation. And you are our general counsel as Fortra. Lightning Docs are official, we're the official docs for AAPL. And we have that partnership, but that is a partnership, and I think that's where the understanding is different. And how we support each other. So
and I think it's really funny, right? When we're at these conferences, people often say, "Oh, like you guys are doing such a good job at this conference to us," and I'm like, thanks, but like we're not running it. We agree with you.
Literally last year we were sitting at Pronto together. It was Nima, Kevin, and I. And somebody walked up to Nima in front of me and said, "This was such a great event. You did such a great job." And Nima's like, "Thanks so much." But literally Linda and with her team. And I'm like, "Thank you." But it was hilarious. And Nima's like, "But it happens all the time." And then they will talk to me about their events. So.
Well, and it's important, right? Because I think it's one of those things where I don't think that your average person realizes that we look to one another to fill critical needs.
Right.
Right. We understand that there's AAPL is an association that has a completely disparate membership base, right? You can have a person who is just a high net worth investor who wants to lend their own funds and just understand kind of, hey, what's going on in the marketplace? You could have really, really large institutional shops, and you kind of just have to sit there and serve all their needs, which I think is also really interesting as an association because generally speaking, if you're going to be an association, the voices that are going to be heard are just the largest members in the organization, right? But the problem is their interests are actually quite different.
They're very different.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So, and when we're talking about things like legislation and proposing legislation and proposing what kind of advocacy we should be involved in, you really have to take this zoomed out lens and go, is it truly in the benefit of all of the members?
Sure.
Because if it's not, you just kind of got to, you can't pit them against each other.
Right.
And so we've had the opportunity over the years to really just kind of bounce ideas off back and forth and go, hey, I think like right now, I think this is really a critical moment in the industry for this, whatever it might be.
Right.
And in the past few years, it really has been this refocus back on education, because I think there's going back into the kind of the private credit conversation, there's a real fear in my mind of if there isn't a professionalization moment, well, there's nothing stopping this amazing tailwind that we've had from just evaporating overnight.
Sure.
Right? You end up with significant fraud, or you end up with bad actors. I mean, like one bad actor could really take down an entire industry at this point, because it's still in its infancy.
Right.
We're still we're at the starting process of being trusted. And so I just think that there's such an urgency in what we're doing right now to be able to go, well, no, like what should an operator within the space, what are some of the rules of the road, while still giving them autonomy and making sure that they've got the entrepreneurial flexibility that they chose to be in this industry in the first place with. And that's a lot of, I think, what we do here. But it is funny that people, I'm like, I do not work for AAPL. And let me tell you one thing. Linda sure as heck has no problem telling me, I don't care, we're not doing that, and that's stupid. Yeah. For the most, it's actually the thing that I appreciate. You talked about leadership a second ago. One thing I admire about you, and it's actually quite different from me. Anybody that knows me well, I'm a people pleaser. I try not to be. And Linda is the exact opposite of a people, but if there was ever on the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's great from a leadership perspective, because you don't care, right? Because you do not care whether someone is going to want to be your friend or not after that conversation. And that, I think, is admirable and liberating to be in that position. But most importantly, it lets your ethics be the guiding principle of how decisions are ultimately going to be made. Yeah. And so for us, it really is, good examples. We were talking about even Lightning Docs being the official document. It's like, I had to sell you on this idea, right? Because I'm like, dude, this is not a rubber stamp. And I know Linda well enough that, like, she has to go, like, okay, what are the alternatives? What does this look like? What does this look like 10 years from now? Like, you're so thoughtful about these things.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember that conversation as well.
And I just appreciate that. Like, I feel like we have to earn, it's something that is important to us, which is like, we have to earn the trust and maintain, and it can be broken like any good relationship, right? We have to be very thoughtful about making sure that we are adding value each and every year, and we don't take that for granted at all. So we're deeply appreciative of the trust you've placed in us. And I tell the team, like, all the time, I'm like, hey, like, just remember, like, because there'll be times in which they'll say, well, why don't we do this or that? And I was like, if you feel strongly of your opinion, guess what? Go call Linda and plead your case, right? But if you just want her to act as like a mouthpiece for you, or like if you just think like, oh, we're the general counsel, we should be able to, it's like, no, like that means nothing.
Right.
That's the baseline you need to start with, is if you think it's important, then explain to Linda why it's important. And if she agrees, great. And if she doesn't, shut up. Yeah.
And I appreciate the partnership there, because, and the one reason that when I appointed Linda, we appointed Linda as president of this, it was that was the ethos I wanted. It's like,
correct,
because I needed somebody, it's one thing for me in my own business to maybe acquiesce sometimes because it only ever hurts me, right?
Sure.
It's like, but when you're representing an association, a grouping of people, it's not my own personal business interest that's here. It's an association. It's 800, 900 members. And it's like, you have to have someone who will say, from an ethics standpoint, yes or no, and from a mission. Like, so mission and ethics are everything to us. And so, like, and you and I could sit there and say, that is everything. But you have to have somebody who will hold the line without acquiescing to someone because they've got a strong voice, or they've been in the industry, or they're a bully, and the one thing that I've watched Linda stand up to so many times is the bully. Like, when you're in the good old boys club, there's a lot of bullies, and so she's done a great job of navigating that.
And I commend you as well for that, Eddie, because I think it's very hard, because it's still a business at the end of the day, right? And so to have that much of a long game and long take where you say, no, I'm actually going to sit here and say no to lots and lots of opportunities, because I'm sure, I remember, we were one of the first partnerships that was really announced in this, and your like phone just starts blowing up. Whoa, what do you mean AAPL is partnering with people? Right? And so the amount of no that you have to be in the business of, right? And with, to the point of like kind of people who are going to try to bully their way through that and threaten and say, well, take, and so just to be able to stick back and go, to your point, is this going to tie to the mission of the organization, right? Do I think that this is an ethical, does it make sense? Do I feel comfortable
Sure.
going out after this and representing to the industry that we've made this choice, right? And being able to take the questions that are going to be coming with that. I mean,
and I play so much on I love the real estate side, and I love the private equity side, and I love the money, the capital side. And one thing that Linda has stayed very, very, specific on is she doesn't have to have the industry knowledge from a lending perspective to have the knowledge to build a correct association. And while she could, run circles around so many people in this space,
totally.
it's not what Linda's responsibility is. And even more so, to go back to your point, as the big institutions, I mean, I literally had a conversation with the largest insurance company in the United States, who is probably the largest capital provider in our source.
That's right.
And in the end, if they want to try to impose their will, you have to have somebody who's equally strong to say, that's okay, I'm not interested. And we've had to do that sometimes. We've had to, the amount of, sponsorship and, presenting sponsors and stuff, they come in there willing to just throw, because it's tied to big capital. And the result of being, given an elevated voice in this is very substantial.
Right.
And so, we, even in recent days, just resisting things that are going to cause issues and maybe even litigation against us because of it, but with the intention of staying straight on the mission and staying straight on ethics.
But Eddie, it's so rare, and it kind of just takes us back to that conversation. It takes us back to Mr. Chow, right? Like, it's interesting because that's really difficult to do, and and more often than not, people will look and act, and it's not wrong, but they'll work in their business best interest, right? And it's a rational business best interest. And then you have a very, what I would say, small population that go, no, like, this may not be in my business best interest, but ultimately, like, it's the right thing to do. And it's interesting I really admire people. And like, this year's been a great example. Like, I tell people this year I've learned a lot about, like, who are your partners, right? And who are the people that will really have your back? Who's going to stand up for you? And it's not oftentimes the people that you think are going to do it. And my main girl Linda over here, and Eddie, like, you two have demonstrated your character through and through in particularly trying times.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I've said multiple times, I know what's right, and I will always stand for what's right, and I will do what's right for this company. In the end, no matter who it's about, I will always protect the company.
Yeah, and I've seen. You're putting your money where your mouth is. It's a truly.
It's important to me,
and it shows.
It's an interesting dynamic. Obviously, so much of the inner workings, but with her, she even, like, in order for me to always put myself in check, like, she has the ability to argue against anything that, because I have a bunch of other companies, other business interests. And so even sometimes if it looks like I might, edge into this space, she'll be like, nope, there's a wall here. And I'll listen to that too, because in the end, I've given her full responsibility.
That's right.
And to lead the organization. So
that's right.
It's funny, we joke, but I may be one of the only people in this world that can tell him no. And he doesn't like to hear that. So, and I will
absolutely have to have.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes, I'm in a partnership, right? I'm in a law firm partnership, and I tell people it's the best thing to be. It's the hardest thing to do, right? Because we want to act in our own self-interest. We want to do what we want to do. And, when you have people when you're in a partnership, you have to sit there and go, okay, like, in particular the way we operate, it's very consensus driven. Right. And that's slow. It's painful. It produces, in my opinion, the absolute best results. But what it does require is it requires you to sit there and go, it has a check on all of your initial instincts.
Sure.
Right. So much of, I think, particularly for people that have an entrepreneurial spirit to them, they are so driven by instinct. And that instinct is so dumb, so much. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a terrible instinct ultimately. And if you don't have people who are meaningfully going to tell you no and check you. My wife, my law firm partner,
we all need
them. They're great, right? Like, they really are such a good pushback on the ego, and the ego is such a dangerous thing if you're living in it, right? And I think particularly when you look at the space we play in, my gosh, like, the ego's everywhere. Right. And, I think so many people in this industry need better partners or otherwise to be like, hey, like, you got it. This isn't about you.
Sure. Yeah. Ego oftentimes is propped up by capital, by money, right? Like it's the ultimate check to so many entrepreneurs. If I made it, if I've had success, if I have money, then therefore I must be right.
Yes.
And so therefore, if I'm right, then my ego must be accurate, my self understanding. What I believe though, and what I think the industry is, I look at everything from a philosophical angle, and it's like, I think that ego oftentimes gets you off the ground in business.
Sure.
Ego is like, I have enough self-belief that I'll go out and I'll do something that no one else is willing to do. I'll go knock doors. I'll go whatever it is, sell myself, right?
Sure.
But then it's like, then all of a sudden, then we create, I was talking about this to her, it's like, then we create chaos because of the lift, right? So like, ego always creates chaos, right? Because ego is always, it creates friction, right?
Yes.
It's selfish versus selfless. And so then you get to this point where you have to organize. Organize is essentially pulling back, saying, I need someone else. Well, all that is now an absence of ego. And it's like, then in the absence of ego, we can organize. And then all of a sudden, the friction and the pain begins to subside. Most people, entrepreneurs, they get their business off the ground. It's chaotic. You then find somebody to organize it, and it's like, oh, I can actually do more with less now. Right. And I feel like that's our industry. It's like it's a paradigm of like our entire industry. It's like ego got us off the ground, but it was the Wild West, right? It's like, correct. Now it's the organizational structure that'll create the ability to go further, correct, or not. And so, in that, when you see people who constantly prop up ego, right? Mm-hmm. What they're doing is they're creating resistance to ultimately what we can, future have. So,
and it's fascinating, right? Because I think that's where I really see the challenge. I think of people that particularly run high ego is without an appreciation for the organization of the chaos, right? There's a cap. And and it's a pretty low limit.
It's a ceiling, yeah.
Right? That ceiling is fairly low off of a single person's efforts. And so once you bring the organization and that dichotomy, when it plays off well, right? Because the ego is smart, right? I mean, they are able to accomplish.
Sure.
But they're not able to they're able to build good things, but not great things. Yeah. And so you need this mutual respect behind this kind of operator role, this entrepreneur role, and just let that sort of synergy builds great things. Right. And the moment those get out of whack, right, without an appreciation of, hey, like, no, you really worked. Right. Without you, we couldn't get here, and vice versa. Without you, we'll never grow. Right? It's having that balance back and forth that builds to great enterprise.
I 100% agree, and I think it goes all the way back to Mr. Chow's. And I think that when
it all starts from there.
It may have been the best Mr. Chow's commercially.
Yeah. I don't think I've eaten there since, but it was great. But
the conversation was great.
The conversation was great. No, it's funny though, because it goes back to the construct by which you live your life. And when you go into partnerships and there's not true alignment, what happens is the ego is the thing that separates. It creates the friction. When you have a faith-based construct, right? Like, no matter what you believe in, and that's not my goal is to like push or promote something, but it's like from a faith-based construct, you begin to think that there is a higher power. There's some greater knowledge or wisdom than I. Yes. I fit into a greater system of which I'm not the center. It's like, and all of a sudden when you have that construct, it allows like this tie. It's like, oh, okay, there's a place for all of us versus a place for one of us, Correct. And I think that's a huge piece. But I think that alignment on partnership becomes everything.
100%.
So.
No, and when you think of the faith-based construct, then the ego then becomes a vehicle to be used. And you say, okay, great, like you've given me certain talents and skills. Yeah. How am I going to be best utilized in this? Sure. Right? Rather than thinking of it as, well, I got me here and I'm going to build this next thing. It really just takes away okay, cool, like I'm a vessel. Yeah. Right. Where's my best application at this point?
Yeah, use me best. Yeah.
Right, use me best. And I think that humility of spirit can lead to great things.
It totally can.
Right, because it's not about you anymore.
Right.
And I think that particularly for those around you, they also see that. Right? The more and more, and I've seen this with you, and really great organizations always do the same thing. I admire a person Bill Tesser is the person that comes to mind that the first people to acknowledge their team is their reason for success. I've always had an admiration for because it's the people who I think have the ability to brag the most and to be able to really say is like they built great things that are actually very hard to parallel and build, but to be able to go is actually like I played a very small role in this thing. What I really did is I'm working with these incredible people.
Right.
And they're here. So like you want to go thank somebody, go talk
Go to them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that, it goes back to servant leadership. Linda used the term servant leadership. And I think that so oftentimes we get that part wrong, where it's like the first emphasis is on the servant, not on the leader, right? Like where it's like in servant, that means that I'm willing to go do any job at any time,
Sure.
And leadership is just about stepping out before anyone else will,
Correct.
right? Like leadership isn't, it's not, me in positional authority. It's being willing to go pick up the trash on the ground just because it's needed to be picked up, or it's willing to put up signs, or it's willing to do whatever.
Correct.
And to me, that goes back. It is a faith-based construct, but it's like, but it also, to your point, I think is evidenced in every great organization. Not every big organization. You can build a big organization on a dictatorship.
Sure.
That doesn't mean it's a great organization.
That's right. That's
And
right. You can have a fear-based culture or otherwise, right?
Yeah.
But I think places, I think you have a similar core philosophy, which is I want to be at a place that I want to be at, right? Like that's ultimately kind of what we're spending a lot of time at work, right? And so like, do I want to work at this company?
Yeah.
Would I want to be in this? Would I want to have me as a leader? Like, kind of it's a gut check of if you focus so much on the metrics and the revenues and the profits, you lose sight of that so quickly because that's the only indicator of success.
Yeah. I recently had to have a gut check in my own, private equity firm over in Florida. And one morning I walked in, I got off the elevator, and, I'm probably the earliest one in, and I'm in a bad mood. And I literally walked into my office and I sat down and I thought, we're 2 or 3 years old in that group. It's had, massive growth. And I walked in and I said, same thing. I don't think I want to work here. Now I'm the owner, so this is a problem. I don't have a choice but to work here. I would let everybody down if I walked out. So my choice is either walk away because I don't want to work here anymore and I don't need to, or fix it. And it was a huge wake up call. It's like, because I think sometimes, especially people that are analytical, that like the spreadsheets and they want to lead from a metric standpoint, it's so easy to get in on, is success tied to this dollar? Is success tied to this KPI? And the reality of it is success is never tied to a dollar or never tied to a KPI. Totally. Success is always tied to the cultural elements that the byproducts are KPIs and revenue and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do a lot of presentations internally in the organization, and we'll often have a market component. And I'll say, here's what's happening with the Fed, and these are tailwinds, these are headwinds, et cetera. And I always go back and I said, this is information for you to know, to kind of give you some idea of where we think we might have an ability to grow faster than others. But ultimately, you should ignore all of that. It's actually kind of useless information because you don't get to control it. It could go up or down. It's not something that we can build our business on. And I was like, but if you just think about for a second of providing incredible customer service, right? Kind of going back into don't you enjoy good customer service?
Yeah.
Why don't it's the same thing you enjoy as a consumer. Just go out there and do for them. It's totally within your control. Spend some more time on the phone than you normally would have with a client when you're talking to them.
Yeah.
Genuinely care about them, right? If you do those things, we'll do fine.
Yeah.
The byproduct will always work, but focus on the customer first, always in that context. And if you do that, then the environment becomes one place in which, because I think for me, when you think of organizations in which it's just a job, is I think there's a deep dissatisfaction on both ends of the table.
Absolutely.
Right? Then the people don't like the customers they're working with, and the customers don't like the people, and they both just see each other as necessary evils to get something done.
Yeah.
Right? We don't need to be a Jiffy. I know it's no slight to Jiffy Lube. Don't sue me. We don't need to be a necessary evil in the market. We can, in fact, be a great place that is loved by our customers, right? And similarly, that we enjoy them.
Yeah.
And it's all worth it at that point.
That's awesome. Very cool. I'll turn it over to you for last question.
One question I asked Mike, and one thing I'd ask you, is advice that you would give your younger self.
Oh, geez, I have so much. People that know me well know that I actually grew up pretty insecure for most of my younger life. And it was because I didn't know what I was good at. I had no appreciation for my strengths. I have weird strengths. I am, I tell people I'm so lucky that I get to be to do what I do because I get to apply kind of this math brain. I'm always kind of naturally inclined on that side. And so, and I really enjoy, kind of the art of persuasion, right? And so I'm kind of in this really random little juxtaposition of those two things coming together, but I had no appreciation, 18-year-old, 16-year-old, like they don't get that, right? Those two values, who cares whether they're good at math and you can persuade people of something, right? And it makes me really sad that I spent so much of my life thinking less of myself, right? And not thinking that I was ever going to amount to anything. When I just didn't realize that like the effect of kind of finding that sweet spot and then living in it, like the past 10 years of my life have been amazing, like beyond my wildest dreams. Like I'm so thankful and for like every day, like my wife and I talk about this all the time. We're like, can you believe this is our life? Right? We never thought that this would be how we would live. And like, we're just like, this is cool. Right? And you're kind of in that place where you're like, hey, like, I think we're doing what like God wants us to do here. Right? Like, I think we're actually in this like place where our natural talents is actually what we're being applied to do. And so, it's finding that blend earlier and stop focusing, so much of, I think, my childhood, and I don't know if yours was similar, was there's so much focus on working on your weaknesses, right? And that's important. You should do so, right? But it's actually like, it's focusing on those strengths that I have found that's where real growth can occur. And if you can double down on those strengths rather than being like, well, like I would joke, like I tell people in my office, and I was like, hey, you're all going to always have a problem with me from a communications perspective. And I'm not trying to tell you that I don't like want to improve and become a better communicator, but there's so much going on up here that like, I think I've told people things. Like I promise you, I'm not a bad person. That's so, like, whenever people tell me like, oh, wait, I already told you this. And I was like, I agree with you 100%. I'm not telling you that you didn't tell me this. I'm telling you this, I don't recall it. And I'm sorry. I wish I had better memory recollection. I just wish that my brain worked differently than it did. But the living in one's strengths, but ultimately is these past 10 years for me at least have really been, I think, finding myself and really finding confidence and comfort in who I am. Because once you're there, then you can kind of get to be more Linda. Right? And you can be like, no, like I'm just going to do what's right. Every day. And you can question my motives, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me. Right? But there's an ability to go, I'm still going to do what I think is right. And that's going to be my guiding principle. And it's just freeing because then you're not worried about like, who am I going to offend? Who's this going to hurt? Who am I doing this for? Right. There's an ability to go, no, I'm just going to do what's right today.
It's good. Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you so much for everything you do for the industry, for what you've done for AAPL.
Thank you.
Appreciate the support, the friendship, and the conversation with Mr. Chow's.
So we got to go back there.
Apparently we're going to
redo. Seriously, thank you and the whole team. You guys are always so supportive, and we love the partnership, so we appreciate it very much. So it does go both ways. So
no, I appreciate that, and the two of you have been amazing partners to work with, and I hopefully we work hard to earn your trust, and I can just tell you from the other side of it is we just feel so deeply indebted to both of you because when trust is necessary, you two have just showed up each and every time, and it really means a lot, and it's not something we take for granted.
Same. I think that goes both ways. So cheers to a lot more years together.
Cheers. If we're cheersing, all right. Once again, thank you to our podcast sponsor, CV3 Financial Services, the unconventional lender built to help brokers win more deals. Whether your clients are looking to buy and hold, fix and flip, build from the ground up, or pull cash out to fund their next move, CV3 Financial can help with financing in 47 states. Visit cv3financial.com/AAPL to learn more. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for being a part of the AAPL Constituency podcast. As always, tune back in, share this, and let us know who you want us to bring on the show to hear more insight from, but not just that, more relational insight. What a great show today. Thank you so much to Fortra and to Nima and the entire team. But appreciate it. Make sure you share and stay tuned for the next episode.